English speakers don't speak fast, they just speak differently. And you might think that English is a fast language. And if you often get frustrated about not understanding everything that you listen to, or you lose track of what you're listening to in a podcast or in a video or in a movie, I just want you to know that this is a totally normal thing to experience if you haven't actively worked on listening to real, authentic English. Many times the kind of English we listen to in a traditional classroom is pure, very clear, recorded by actors who've had pronunciation training and there's no background noise. But is this how real communication works? By the end of this video, you'll understand why English speakers seem so fast, how you could get used to understanding real, authentic English, and how active listening, which has literally helped me the most in terms of improving my fluency and my confidence, can help you tremendously, not just with improving your listening, but also your speaking skills, your vocabulary, and your pronunciation as well. In a study in 2019, observing 17 languages, English actually came out to be among the slower languages, way behind Japanese, Spanish, Finnish, Italian, Korean, and a bunch of other languages. What makes spoken English seem so fast is probably a combination of these two factors. Like I said in the introduction, you were never taught how to listen. You were given tests, quizzes, exams, and you were expected to understand everything without really going into the details of the features of spoken English, the different sounds and the sound features that we'll be talking about in this video. Without these necessary skills to understand real, authentic English, it's understandable how you might not take off the subtitles when you're watching a movie. You might not be listening to too many podcasts because you're just too scared of getting way too frustrated if you don't understand everything, or you start panicking the moment you lose track of what you're listening to. And the second thing is the fact that English is a language that has around 44 sounds, but we spell these 44 sounds with only 26 letters, which is one of the reasons this channel, my social media, and all my courses, my communities, my programs are based so heavily on learning from listening. Struggling English students, mainly coming from a school mindset, spend way too much time studying the written form of the language. They study grammar rules, they do exercises, memorize words, and usually when they memorize words, they only remember the spelling and the translation of the word. But what about their pronunciation? And their pronunciation when they're surrounded by other words? And students basically spend way too much time studying from textbooks, from websites, from materials that don't give them any information about how English words, expressions, and sentences are spoken. In this video, I'll be showing you 7 different ways to make listening to real, authentic English in interviews, podcasts, videos, movies, everywhere else way easier by focusing on 7 sound rules of the English language. The reason I learned to speak English so naturally and fluently, and I talk about this all the time on my page, have improved my vocabulary, my grammar, and speak English without thinking too much, developed a clear pronunciation, and partially the reason I've managed to build my confidence in speaking English is because I was focusing so much on actively listening to real, authentic English. And in this video, you can find out more about how you can also use active listening to improve your fluency, your pronunciation, your vocabulary, everything else about your English, by learning more about the techniques I use and the ways I help my students achieve the same results. Hey English learner, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Chubby. I'm an English fluency, learning, and language anxiety coach, and this is a channel for serious English learners who want to learn more about how to make vocabulary more memorable and how to speak English more freely, confidently, and comfortably with the help of listening and spoken interaction. So if these are topics that you're interested in, you'd like to find out more about speaking, listening, or vocabulary, and you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe, you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can get all the updates on anything you'll find useful on this channel to help you with your fluency and your confidence.
And you get out of my way.
This one sentence already shows so many of the features of spoken English that we often have a look at with my students in our listening workshops inside my fluency program, the Proficiency Fortress. The reason you might think spoken English is so fast is probably because of this feature of the English language that we call connected speech, which is the phenomenon that English speakers would roll words into each other within a phrase or a sentence, simply because it's so much easier to say things when you don't make pauses in between words, you just make pauses in between expressions. So instead of get out of, you will see English speakers saying get out of. Connected speech manifests itself in all sorts of shapes and forms. One of the most common features you will observe is what we call vowel linking. But if you know my teaching, my coaching style, you know that I'm not just gonna give you all the information, I'm gonna make you work. So let me show you a few examples and you can come up with a rule. What is that little sound you hear in between the words?
You have no idea how many 15-hour training swims I had done.
They had no idea how big this would get.
And now they have no idea how many cases they have.
No idea.
No idea.
No idea.
If you were listening carefully, you heard a little w sound in between no and idea. So instead of saying no idea, people actually connect the two, which becomes no idea. And this is what's eventually going to happen to all the other words that end with an u or an o, which are followed by another word beginning with a vowel. Listen to a few more examples.
He couldn't see any reason to go on.
Distribution is changing, and so is development.
I'm talking about our ability as humans to form new ideas and concepts.
Consonants also find all sorts of ways to connect to the next word, which can make it harder for you to work out where the words begin and where the next word ends, which is something we often practice with my students. Let's see a few examples and tell me what's happening.
And old field boundaries still stand out.
How could I volunteer internally?
Fit in a bit of travel before and after.
In all of these cases, the last consonant of the first word, it was a d or a t sound, rolled into the next word that began with a vowel. So we had stand out, could I. And in the last one, we could even observe consonant linking twice. Fi, ti, na. Being able to understand connected speech, or those words and expressions that roll into each other, is going to be crucial if you want to improve your listening skills, but also if you want to improve your fluency. And this all starts with learning words as part of expressions, never separately, like what most of us do in school, memorizing a list of words, but never expressions where those words are used. What we want to work on is to understand and recognize those words, not just when we see them written down in a text, but also when we hear them in a sentence where there are no spaces. So if you learn words as part of expressions and you've automatized them through expressions, you won't just be able to speak English much more fluently without always thinking about what the next word is, but you'll also be able to recognize those words as you hear them in expressions. If you'd like to fast track your listening skills, understanding fast English speakers way better, using authentic podcasts, interviews, and watch movies without subtitles, which is also basically a big chunk of your confidence when you walk into a conversation. I go way more in depth on this, all the sounds rules of English, the way spoken English sounds, how you can understand it better, all the strategies, the tactics that I was using that helped me not just understand spoken English, but also use the power of listening to improve my fluency in my course, Ears Wide Open. You can check out and dive into the first 7 lessons for free. See the first link in the description below. There's also an extra sound added in specific situations that you will never see in its physical manifestation when you read a sentence, which you will clearly see if you compare these two examples.
Book where a Cameroonian government official saw it. Book where a Cameroonian government official saw it. Book where a Cameroonian government official saw it.
Brought back this equipment, or the idea of this equipment, to brought back this equipment, or the idea of this equipment, to brought back this equipment, or the idea of this equipment. To
what was the extra sound between idea and of, and saw and it? Let me play them again.
Or the idea of this equipment, to, or the idea of this equipment, to
saw it, saw it.
This phenomenon is called the intrusive R, and it's a particular feature of British English and all the other accents of English where R isn't necessarily pronounced all the time. Again, to communicate their ideas faster and speak English in a more connected way, English speakers are going to add this extra sound between words that end in a specific vowel and start with a specific vowel, because it's so much easier for an English speaker to say idea of instead of idea of. And not understanding this rule and making making sure you recognize the words as you hear them could also result in a lot of misunderstanding.
I've got two things. I've got vanilla ice cream. I've got two things. I've got vanilla ice cream.
The word you heard is actually not vanilla ice, it's vanilla rice, but because vanilla ends in the specific vowel that we talk a lot about in the Ears Wide Open course, the schwa, one of the most important sounds you will ever learn in the English language. So whenever you hear that extra R where it's not supposed to be, always think about the rule of the intrusive R. If what you hear doesn't make any sense, just think of the context or the words around and remember that there might be an intrusive R that makes understanding those expressions a bit harder. Because of the same reasons, you might also find some consonants disappear. And I can't emphasize it enough how important it is for us to learn vocabulary, not just by reading them and memorizing its translation, but also by hearing those words, especially in videos, podcasts, interviews, where the words aren't just used in their natural context, so you have a better idea of what that word means. You will also have a better memory. You'll be able to remember that vocabulary better. You'll also be able to train your ears to recognize those words in whatever you're listening to. You might also misunderstand a couple of words. That usually happens to my students when they don't know this rule. One clear example is the word fax. Let's listen to how this word is actually pronounced.
So when you consider these two facts,
Those facts and figures have no power.
Now, what other word does it sound similar to if we take away the context? That's right, facts. We need to understand how just by looking at the spelling or remembering the spelling of a word doesn't mean we'll be able to recognize those words when we hear them, because the two might not be in correlation with each other. As we are learning to speak English for communication purposes, we need to understand how just because we see how a word is spelled, we might also memorize the spelling. That doesn't mean we'll be able to recognize the words unless we practice and train our ears to understand and recognize those words from real English sentences. There is a sound, probably the most hated sound in the English language, that sometimes appears, sometimes disappears, and there are at least 3 different ways to pronounce it. Can you guess what sound I'm talking about? The T sound. So here's the T about T, pun intended. The T has a particular pronunciation. It's not always easy to release the T, and that's partly why it might not be pronounced all the time, or it will shapeshift into a different sound that will make it even harder for us to understand what we hear. Like in the following example.
And it's not like you can just stick your head underwater and count them to check on the dam and count them.
Instead of count them, we won't release that T so many times, and it will turn into count them. And the other issue with the T is that the T letter might be pronounced in all sorts of different ways depending on people's accent or depending on the situation. Let's hear a few examples.
Does it make you a better cook? Do you need it? I don't think so. A better way of helping us achieve our goals.
It's much more affordable and better for the planet.
Besides connected speech, it's also important to get your ears trained to understand stressed and unstressed syllables, which is at the heart of understanding spoken English and improving your pronunciation as well. The truth is, a lot of languages don't work the same way as English. Most languages are syllable-timed languages, but English is a stressed time language, which basically means that an English sentence is typically a combination of a few stressed syllables. These are syllables that we pronounce way stronger, and a bunch of unstressed syllables. Let's see a really good example.
How to shape the preferences and behavior of a powerful artificial mind such that it does not kill everyone.
If you're looking for any patterns to find out what words are going to be stressed and what words or syllables are going to be unstressed, you will see that in this sentence as well, the stressed syllables or words include words like behavior, powerful, and kill, verbs, adjectives, and nouns, which are words that have a meaning, whereas words that will be unstressed are usually going to be words that express some sort of grammatical relation. And the words that are unstressed are mostly going to be grammar words. What often trips a lot of struggling English students up, and this is what we address specifically in some of the practice videos, the training videos inside the Ears Wide Open course, is when speakers say these little unstressed words super fast after each other,
such that it does not, when nobody else considered it rewarding enough to work on.
The solution to this is to train your ears to understand a combination of these words when they said out loud really fast. And this could include what are you going to do becomes what are you going to do. One of the most becomes one of the most, and he should have been doing becomes it should have been doing. Which of these sound rules of English have you heard or haven't heard before? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and also let me know if you want me to make a part 2 where I could potentially let you in on 7 other features of spoken English to help you get better at understanding fast, real, authentic English, have a clearer pronunciation, and speak English way more fluently and way better. Don't forget to check out the Ears Wide Open course. The first 7 days are free of charge for you to use all the practice videos, practice materials. So the next time you have the opportunity to speak to or listen to a fast English speaker, you won't waste any time or energy trying to understand them. So the next time you speak to or listen to a fast English speaker, you won't waste any of your time or energy having a hard time trying to understand them.